It's time for Football at 4 with 97.3 ESPN.com's Andrew Dicecco.
My first allegiance is what will be best for the Philadelphia Eagles and our fans for the next 3, 4, 5 years.
Powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios. It's Football at 4.
All right, Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, which dropped yesterday. It was another really good edition from Jeff and Adam. Today, it's Andrew Dicecco, who wrote about the 5 camp battles that he is looking forward to. We'll kind of break those down for you here as we are about a month and a week to Eagles training camp, July the 27th. And Andrew Dicecco here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN on a happy hour Friday edition as we never forget the NFL here during Football at 4. Andrew, how are you, my man?
Hey, Mike, doing great.
All right, so over at InsideTheBirds.com, you took a look at the 5 summer camp battle or the summer battles that will be going into camp, and we'll take a look at some of these and get your breakdown on because, you know, the word competition has been out there a lot, and you look around the starting spots on this team, and it seems that not many of those are up for grab, but there are still a lot of camp battles on here that we're going to be taking a look at. Let's start with number 5 on your list, and who's the backup running back behind Miles Sanders? Let's kind of break down the competitors here. Johnson, Howard, Boston Scott. I guess the rookie also would be thrown in there as well.
Yeah, I think Davion Johnson wins that battle. He's the most talented of the bunch, and he has a more versatile skill set than both Boston Scott and Jordan Howard. So
Johnson, do you kind of look at it as Johnson is battling Howard for a spot? I mean, are those kind of like one of those guys make it, or is there a possibility that they both could make it?
I think there's certainly a possibility that both of them can make it. They're both between the tackle runners, yeah, sure, and they have that physical element to the offense, but Jordan Howard is not as good of a pass catcher as Davion Johnson. He can be more of a short yardage back. Davion Johnson can give you more as a pass catcher out of the backfield than both Miles Sanders and Jordan Howard can. Boston Scott is more of a number 3 or number 4 running back. He kind of got exploited when he had to take on more of a lion's share of the offense, taking care. He wore down with his carries. He's a small guy, so he's best when utilized and sparingly, I would say.
So if Miles Sanders were to miss a game to the season, whatever it may be, Davion Johnson, you think would be the guy that would kind of be leaned on to be, you know, the main running back on this team?
If he can stay healthy, yes.
Boston Scott, as you mentioned, it's interesting. When Sanders is out, Scott seems to give you more, obviously, because he gets more touches. But he doesn't seem – well, this is with Doug Peterson. We don't know how that's going to change with Nick Sirianni. But is Boston Scott and Kenneth Gainwell in a competition, or can they both have a role on this team?
I think I think Boston Scott's more in a competition with Gainwell than he would be with Jordan Howard or Davion Johnson. When you look at what both of those players bring to the table, both Kenneth Gainwell and Boston Scott, they're both a little bit smaller players that have a more compact build. They run tougher than their size would indicate. They can catch the football. They're kind of Gainwell is not as explosive in the open. Neither player is really explosive in the open field. They're slippery, but they're not necessarily home run threats. I think Kenneth Gainwell, given his pedigree, his age, and what he's capable of becoming ultimately, I think he has a higher ceiling than Boston Scott. I think he's going to make the team, of course. I think Boston Scott, out of all the players, I think both him and Jordan Howard are on the outside looking in.
Yeah, as you write at InsideTheBirds.com, Andrew Dicecco says that Howard might be the most unexciting option, but he's also a pretty good pass protector. So it seems that each one of these options all kind of do something well, but none of them, you know, kind of do the same thing well. Where you got Howard's a good pass blocker. Johnson might be better at this. Scott's better at catching the ball. Gainwell is going to be a very elusive kind of guy. They all seem to excel at something differently.
Right, but I think if you're looking at if you're assessing the guys who are in contention for the number 2 or number 3 role, I think should Miles Sanders miss a game or two, neither of those guys outside of Davion Johnson can handle anything more than 6 to 8 carries. Boston Scott's a 6-carry-a-game guy. Gainwell is going to be sprinkled into the offense as a rookie, I imagine. Jordan Howard is not flashy. He's not a home run threat. He's more of the short yardage thumper. I think Kerryon Johnson could handle 10 carries or so. I think it'd be more of a committee approach, but I think that Kerryon Johnson would be the second option.
All right, Andrew Dicecco, football at 4. Number 4 on your list, it is wide receiver number 4. I think we all kind of envision that you're going to see Jalen Reagor, Devonta Smith, and probably Travis Fulgham. But after that, these 4 guys can either make the team or get cut. It's very wide open between Greg Ward, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, Quez Watkins, and John Hightower, who, similar to that running back, they all kind of do something a little different. They all add a little something. You got Ward, who's very steady. You got, I don't know what Arcega-Whiteside adds at this point. Maybe a bigger catch radius and a guy who's a red zone target. Quez Watkins, probably a guy that you could do a lot of different things, bubble screens, jet sweeps. And John Hightower, who has shown the ability to get past the defense. So, wide receiver 4, how do you see that one breaking down?
Well, it's interesting because there's a number of different players vying for that role, and like you said, they all bring a different element to the offense, right? I mean, J-Jaw he's certainly not lived up to anywhere close to the standards of what a second round draft pick should, and he's only has 14 catches and I believe 25 career games, which is abysmal. That's horrendous, right? There's no denying that, but let's see what he can do with Nick Sirianni and this young coaching staff who all have a wide receiver development background, and they're going to be a little bit more innovative and a little bit more adept to scheming towards player strengths as opposed to sort of trying to shoehorn them into the offense and making them do things that they may not be as adept at doing. So, I mean, yeah, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside might be a good red zone option. He could be a good possession guy, adds a little bit of size. He's going to have to probably show that he can contribute on special teams. I mean, they might not want to rule out him adding 5 to 10 more pounds and making him more of like a hybrid tight end, if nothing else, because you invested something in him, a pretty substantial draft capital. So you kind of want to exhaust all your options before you part ways. But, I mean, then you look at Greg Ward. Greg Ward, for the better part of 2 seasons, had been the Eagles' most consistent wide receiver. Doesn't have the size, doesn't have the speed, but he's proven that he can not only play the slot, he can also play the outside. Just has a feel for finding the openings in the zone. He sees the game through the eyes of a quarterback. He was a former quarterback, of course, at Houston. So he's a route-running technician. Is he going to break a tackle and create yards after the catch? No, but he's a steady presence. He has a good rapport with every quarterback that he's seen snaps with because he's just he knows how to get open, and he's consistent at catching the football. He can also return punts, so there's added value there. But he doesn't give you – he's very limited in terms of what he can do. I think that when you look at the younger receivers in Quez Watkins and John Hightower, they add a vertical element. They're electric in open field, and they can do a number of different things, taking the ball out of the backfield and just overall take the top off of the defense. And that's not something that J.J. nor Greg Ward can do. Reagor can do it, but outside of that, they don't have a lot of guys that have that ability to stretch the field. So I think Hightower was somebody who was kind of thrown into the offense early in his rookie season. He looked unprepared. He looked overwhelmed. He struggled. He battled through confidence issues. His route running, which I had seen him at the Shrine Bowl, his route running was one of his strongest areas. He looked very lost as a route runner. He was kind of just sort of drifting through his patterns, didn't catch the ball consistently. Quarterbacks just seemed to lose confidence in him, and I think he ultimately lost confidence in himself, which kind of paved the way for Quez Watkins, who came on last season in a limited role. You got to see what he was able to do. He flashed, and he showed his explosion in the open field. I think he's going to kind of be one of those training camp standouts this summer. I kind of pegged him to win that number 4 job going into training camp.
All right, it's funny. So Watkins, okay, I want to ask you, of that group, which guy excites you the most?
Of the 4, Quez Watkins.
So you feel like he can be the biggest contributor of those guys? Yeah.
Is he going to be a target monster and suddenly command a prominent role on the offense? No, I'm not suggesting that, but I am suggesting that he has the traits that the Eagles need. And I think that he showed towards the end of last season when the lights started to come on for him. I think he's going to carry that momentum throughout the offseason and learn from – I mean, he's somebody that seemed to take to the coaching last season. He wasn't a factor early in the season. He really started to come on last year, and I think that's really going to carry over. You're going to see him kind of carve out a more a role where it can be an explosive option in the offense, where they can maybe stretch the field with him, get him the ball out of the backfield on dump-offs. You saw what he was able to do. I believe it was against the Cardinals, if I'm not mistaken, on that long run, catch and run, which he scored on. So he can do some things, and he's also a lot younger than John Hightower. John Hightower is 25 years old, and I don't think that he has the necessary play strength to command a larger role.
Let me ask you about Hightower real quick, because he averaged like almost 17 yards a catch. He had a catch for 50 yards in one game. He had a catch for 59 in another game. If they polish him up, could he be something?
Yeah, I think he can. I mean, let's not forget, he spent 2 years at the JUCO level at Hines Community College, and he played 2 years at Boise State. He didn't command a ton of targets his first season. He really broke out in his last season at Boise State. So he's still very much a raw player at 25 years old. And I thought that the Eagles turned to him and gave him a little bit, sort of overburdened him early as a rookie. And I don't think that he was equipped to do that at that stage of his career, but it was out of necessity. And I think that kind of showed the lack of confidence that they had in J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. But John Hightower, he needs to refine his route running. He needs to catch the football better. He needs to learn how to separate and run professional routes in order for him to be an NFL receiver or have any kind of a future with the Philadelphia Eagles.
All right,
otherwise, he's going to sort of be the guy that sort of toils around on the practice squad and gets a call up here or there like Deontay Burnett.
Yeah, and then, of course, you got Ward, who, very Mr. Dependable. It's kind of hard to see them just parting ways with a guy when everybody else is so unproven. He's about the only proven guy that they got. So that one will be very interesting. Number 3 on Andrew's list of camp battles to watch is the nickel linebacker, which is very interesting. This is Alex Singleton, TJ Edwards, Davion Taylor. All 3 of those guys seem to really bring different skill sets.
Yeah, I mean, you have Alex Singleton, who had 120 tackles last season, 5 for loss, 2 fumble recoveries. He had that interception that was thrown right to him. I started 11 games. I mean, the question for him is, and he did show tenacity and instincts, and he flowed to the football. But now the question is, was that season, was that more of a product of teams not knowing what he was, and now if there's film on him, they're able to adjust? Or is this kind of the player that he was, and they sort of unearthed the gem there? I think out of the players that are vying for that job, I think he's the best option at this current time. I mean, looking at Davion Taylor, I think he's still a raw project, and he's going to see a lot more snaps than he did last season on defense in a sub-package role. But if anyone expecting him to sort of assume a prominent role, it's just not going to happen. You can't throw somebody out there that doesn't know what they're doing just because they run fast. They run like a gazelle, right? I mean, that's a recipe for disaster. I think he still is a year away from being a contributor. And then you look at TJ Edwards. TJ Edwards is someone that I had high hopes for going into last season. He was really impressed as an undrafted free agent, but he doesn't run. He lacks lateral quickness. He's more of a early down run defender. Can't cover well, but he did have 2 sacks last season. He can get after the quarterback. He can stuff the run. And so there is a role for him. I think he would ultimately be the 3rd linebacker, but I just don't think that he's athletic enough to assume one of the top 2 roles on this team.
Davion Taylor, 3rd-round pick. I know you've said before during our segments that, this is a raw guy. Do we expect him to have a role this year? Yeah,
I mean, I think that's a fair expectation given he was taken 3rd round, and they touted him and they promoted him as being this player that they had plans for. So in year 2, I think that he's going to be not just a special teams guy. I think he's going to be a key cog on that unit for sure. But I think on defense, you'll see him sort of gradually get some plays here or there, a few plays here, and then sort of towards the end of the season, I think they're going to sort of try and find find a package that they can utilize his athleticism, his lateral quickness, his coverage ability. But I mean, even when I watched this film in college, he was just a player that was all over the field, but he played like his hair was on fire. He was often over pursued plays, and it just looked like they had a raw athlete out there that didn't exactly know his assignments, and that's a problem. And I think that that's kind of what he showed last season, and that's why he really wasn't a factor. And you saw Sean Bradley play over him.
Yep, Sean Bradley as well as another guy, Temple guy, who's on this roster. All right, the nickel linebacker, Alex Singleton, by the way, who played pretty well last year, right? Do you think he meshes well with Eric Wilson?
Yeah, and by the way, Eric Wilson is someone that the reason why he wasn't mentioned is I believe he's going to be the top linebacker on the team. And of the players that I mentioned, I think Singleton pairs best with him. They're guys that are going to float the football. I think Singleton sort of got exposed against covering Robert Tonyan against the Green Bay Packers last season, but I think overall he really tightened up his coverage. Is he going to be, one of the top cover linebackers in football? Not at all. And will he have the plays where he gets beat? Yeah, that's going to happen. But I think that he kind of improved by leaps and bounds by the end of the season. So, yes, I do think that they pair nicely together.
Well, number 2 on your list is number 2 corner, and we know that there's really not a great option, but you have 3, Maddox, McPherson, and Michael Jacquet. Doesn't excite many people, I would imagine, but who's the favorite for you there?
Yeah, I mean, what a horrendous combination there of players vying for that job. I mean, Avonte Maddox, I don't know that they go back to the well for another season, given he was just completely overmatched and teams were picking on him mercilessly, and he just couldn't stop it. He doesn't have the arm length. He doesn't have the size to compete and contend with some of the bigger-bodied receivers on the outside. Nor do I think it's a fair ask for Zach McPherson, the 4th-round pick, to add so much to his plate and put him under fire as a rookie. I think that a lot of times that can stunt a player's growth. You saw that with Rasul Douglas when he was thrown in there against the Lions on Thanksgiving when Calvin Johnson just had his way, and you sort of saw Rasul Douglas, it really affected him, his confidence. And I think with Zach McPherson, they need to sort of gradually bring him along because remember, playing cornerback, transitioning to playing professional cornerback is not the same as it is other positions. There's a steeper learning curve there. So I think that the Eagles need to sort of bring him along slowly, and I think he's going to be just fine. I think he's a good player, but I don't know that he'll be a viable option this summer to come away with that job. I mean, as tough as it is as tough as it was to write, I think it could ultimately be Michael Jacquet that comes out as the winner.
Yeah, that's a scary thought there, Andrew. All right, last one, of course, is one that they brought up themselves, the Philadelphia Eagles, and that's left tackle, Andre Dillard, Jordan Mailata. This one is for a starting job here. It's probably the biggest storyline of camp, and I think this one's pretty wide open because I feel like people just remember Dillard playing right tackle and just think he stinks based on that one night.
Yeah, I think it's certainly not fair to sort of write Andre Dillard off. He only has 16 games on his resume. Like, you're only as good as your last game, and his last game was abysmal. And granted, but I mean, he's saying all the right things. He seems to be a much more mature player. He's added some strength, which was a necessity because he did not have the requisite play strength to contend with some of the more elite pass rushers in football that he's going to have to sort of go up against each week if he wants to win that job. But I mean, he seems to have turned the corner from his first 2 seasons. Remember, last season was Rob. He had the biceps injury, so he didn't really have it. He was deprived of the sophomore season. So, I mean, we'll see what he's got because you can say everything you want in the press conferences and you can make it all sound good, but the battle's won on the field. So you're not going up against a slouch in Jordan Mailata. Jordan Mailata has come such a long way in such a short period of time. It's remarkable, really. I mean, in his 10 starts, he's proven that he can not only hold his own out there, but he has the potential to become one of the best left tackles in football, in my opinion. That athleticism and that size and the way that he moves is just, you don't find that. It's unparalleled, in my opinion. And I think he has a higher ceiling than Andre Dillard, and I ultimately think he's going to win that job. But it's not. It would be totally unfair to rule out Andre Dillard. I think that's going to be something that's going to kind of go all the way to the end of the summer, and one of the top battle to watch.
Really good stuff. Check out the full piece over at InsideTheBirds.com. He breaks down those 5 Birds summer battles. We are just a couple of weeks away. It's getting here pretty fast. July 27th is when that kicks off, and the Inside the Birds team will be all over Eagles training camp and all over Football at 4 here on the Sports Bash.